Matt Wilson is the operations, strategy, and delivery leader at Alkami, designing and integrating enterprise grade digital banking applications and data pipelines for financial institutions. With that, Matt, we're thrilled to have you at the event today and very much looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Michael. Thrilled to be here, and thanks for that introduction. So today I wanted to share a practical, effective approach for leveraging AI, and this is really based on what we've seen be successful for Alkami. I'll focus less in this presentation on some of our internal product or some of our external product usage and more on the internal side where we built efficiencies and seen successful business outcomes. From our perspective, this is basically a 4-part framework that has helped transform approaches across many different teams at Alkami, and that boils down to these 4 key guidelines. First and foremost, defining the policy and building the guardrails. Second, truly understanding the potential need. Third, choosing the right tool or tools for the job, and then targeted training that reinforces success. So let's start where any good AI success story starts in a highly regulated industry, which is governance and policy. According to a study from Microsoft, around 75% of users are bringing their own AI to work. So governance is key, especially in the financial space. If you aren't building governance, folks are bringing tools anyway. So the first point is in highly regulated industries, we really require a well thought out policy and governance structure. Step 1 is always involving the right people. That goes from the obvious folks like the chief information security officer, your chief legal officer, to operations and strategy leaders, to even the builders who help build the AI tools that you'll use. Step 2 for building the right policy is what I call making a baseline of the non-negotiables. For example, for companies like Alkami that work in the fintech space, we have some things that we're absolutely not comfortable with using AI for, especially on a public model, like exposing PII. Step 3 comes down to understanding the potential use cases before you finalize the policy. This is what I call a reality check. So we've identified a few high-value use cases. Can we actually perform any type of AI against those use cases with a policy that we've set? It's better to be overly specific with your policy based on this early data than it is to have a vague guidance structure that really allows for interpretation. The second thing is governance is definitely not a one and done. I think this goes without saying, but AI is constantly evolving at a very rapid pace, and we see the request for tools and use cases match that rapid pace. Your governance structure should really plan accordingly. For example, we have weekly committee meetings. Folks can submit a form at any point in time with use cases to get on that committee meeting. And this should be broader, again, than just the people building the policy. It should include the tool owners and builders, all the way down to leaders of these individuals who are stakeholders in AI usage and its success. The second point, we really should allow for proof of concepts and experimentation before going full bore. So rather than roll out ChatGPT to your entire enterprise, you probably want to make sure that it's actually usable, especially across the many different roles you might have at your company. And keeping a very, very tight loop with those proof of concepts and your governance committee is ultimately what leads to success. The third piece of advice is wherever possible, build guardrails to enforce policy to both protect your AI data and to enable real experimentation. The thing that you should really expect is people will make mistakes. That is one fact of life. You can build protection around that. For example, if you have Netscope or Zscaler, you can build in rules that catch potential PI exposure and outright reject files that contain PII, like account numbers, social security numbers, or anything like that from being uploaded to any AI system where you are not comfortable with that data being sent. Understanding how and where to leverage AI is of the utmost importance, because a cookie cutter approach to AI will never see as much value as truly understanding how and where to leverage AI. And my view on this is every role in the company can really benefit, but the way they benefit may be vastly different. So just to give a very real world example, if you have a marketing team or tech writers, their needs are likely vastly different from a software engineer. A marketing or a tech writer, they benefit from context. They benefit from style guides, previous articles, product information. A software engineer also benefits from the context, but that context varies vastly from style guidelines, right? They need code guidelines. They need integration patterns that have been deemed to be safe for use. The way in which you integrate the tool may also be vastly different. So maybe you actually use the same AI provider for both of these teams. But a marketing and tech writer team ultimately probably are okay with a web-based UI. If you presented that as an option to your software engineers, you would not get a positive response. They need something baked into their integrated development environment. Understanding the highest value use cases is of the paramount importance, and deep exploration, and I do mean deep exploration, is required to make the best decisions for impactful AI use. Before you begin purchasing tools for any part of your organization, you really should understand the needs of every single role across the company. You want to cast the broadest net possible to understand these use cases, and that may be from conducting interviews, asking for survey feedback, or just researching where AI has made an impact in an industry similar to yours. The third point is you likely already have advanced AI users in several of your job functions. You should use this to your advantage. If you ask an individual that's not familiar with AI, how could you benefit from AI in your role? They're not going to give you the best answer because they simply don't know. If you find champions in each role who are already familiar with AI, you can get answers that are less theoretical and more concrete, which lets the actions you take ultimately see real-world benefits. It's also critical to have the right tool for the job. So let's talk about how we determine that. After you truly understand the needs of each role, weighing the value of each use case versus the cost is the next biggest factor that I look at when determining what is the right AI tool for this job. So using our marketing example, if they have a $200,000 contract with an external provider that helps write content, and they're not really doing anything that we deem unsafe, right? Marketing doesn't have account numbers or social security numbers. What they're writing is ultimately going to be publicly available. You can save $200,000 in a contract and prevent a 3 to 4 week turnaround with content generation by using something as simple as Cloud or ChatGPT. But broad rollouts do have a real cost to your company, and you can offset those costs by prioritizing the things where you know you'll see an immediate ROI. There's really no value in choosing tools that don't work with your policy. So you have two options. Choose tools that either fit with your policy, and those could be privately hosted in something like AWS, or choose tools that allow you to creatively back into policy. So let me explain what I mean by creatively back in the policy. And I'll use a non-Alkami example. I'll use a bank or a credit union. Let's pretend I'm the chief digital officer. And I've decided I want to figure out, why are people calling my call center? Maybe it's because I want to hire a vendor to do automation. Maybe it's I need more training. Whatever the reason might be, there's a real world use case where you could take the last months of call center transcripts, put them into something like deep research, and easily identify the types and frequencies of each request. That said, if you've ever called into a call center, you know that it will contain PII. You have to verify yourself. You have to provide information before you can check your balance or before you can make a transfer. You can actually use AI to help creatively back into your policy, which may not allow those things to be sent. So, for example, you might ask your AI, can you write a program for me that removes all digits from the call transcript? That gets rid of social security numbers, account numbers, and identifying parts of the address. Maybe there's a potential for email. So you also ask an AI tool, could this program remove any string that looks like an email address from those transcripts? And last but not least, maybe you're worried about including their names. You could ask your team to run a simple database query to get a list of all first names and last names and completely strip those from last month's call transcripts. What you're now left with are call transcripts that are within policy versus ones that you wouldn't have been able to use previously. And now I can run deep research and identify where can I get the biggest bang for my buck with either training or omni-channel automation tools to do things like check a balance or make a transfer. Last but not least, it is very important to understand tool overlap and prevent AI tool sprawl. Obviously, this has a cost benefit, but there's several other things that play into that. The cost benefit is obvious. Most of the vendors in this space work on economies of scale, meaning if you sign up 50 users versus 5,000 users, your per seat cost is usually less. But you don't want to pick a tool that has only value to the 50 versus the 5,000. A less obvious benefit is your security team. I talked earlier about building an allow list or block list style approach, really to build the guardrails for what you can and can't do. If you have 100 tools versus 10, their job becomes infinitely more complex and harder to maintain. Last but not least, the ability for your organization to organically learn, I do believe, goes down significantly if all departments are on different tools. So if I have one department that's learning to write agents and another that's not on the same tooling, it's very difficult to look at what was successful with one team and translate that success in a different way for a different role and different team. You should really only allow different tools where those tools create obvious value at a role-based level for people within your teams. Last but not least, knowing how is not the same as knowing when to use AI. So as I've stated previously, a cookie cutter style approach to AI is really only going to yield cookie cutter style results. Most executive teams that I talk with are pushing their organizations as hard as they can to leverage AI, but most of the time this is with zero clear direction on what they mean. I refer to this as the field of nightmares approach rather than the field of dreams. To use a real world non-AI example, outside of my career here at Alkami, I'm a dad of 4 and I'm a volunteer soccer coach. All 4 of my kids played different sports. Running or weight training is probably helpful to every single one of my kids in the sports that they play, but the demands of each sport require vastly different approaches. You wouldn't just expect to buy a basketball goal or a soccer goal and people be better at those sports, but a lot of organizations are making those types of decisions when it comes to their AI strategy and investment. There is a great amount of pre-work required to understand each role and how they can truly maximize their AI results. A per role strategy with targeted training has to happen. If you build it, they will come, like the field of dreams. If you don't, you'll see a much slower usage. To give an example, at Alkami, we leverage an enterprise search and knowledge tool named Glean. There's an enormous difference in understanding how to search for knowledge in Glean and when you should search. We invested more time and effort in training our customer experience group at Alkami than several of the other teams that also have access to the tool. And even internally, we saw the team that got more training and had agents pre-built for specific parts of their job actually had over 300% higher usage than the rest of the organization. This equated to a real-world savings of just under 2 hours a day for over 300 individuals each within our customer experience group. By building specific things that can help, you can break things like linear hiring patterns or even equip your teams with automatic answers as a starting point and with a confidence score rather than them starting from scratch on every support ticket, for an example. The second point is AI doesn't require one-time training. It really requires constant reinforcement for maximum results. There will always be new use cases that pop up, and having a mechanism to share successes helps permeate that success throughout the rest of the people who hold that role within your organization. AI is always going to follow a bell curve pattern without influence, meaning there's always people who are going to be really good at it and those that are questioning, how do I really use this? Some basic things like offering weekly AI office hours, on-demand training, and regularly monitoring usage with a specific look at individuals with low usage and providing them more training will result in more benefit for your organization and for the folks that are working with AI. Like before, if you offer role-specific training, it helps immensely. I always say people are naturally hardwired to use the path of least resistance, but they can't use the path of least resistance if they don't know it exists. A lot of organizations in the fintech space are using what I call the Hansel and Gretel approach, which is we'll leave a few breadcrumbs and hope they can figure it out. You can't do that. You have to build a crystal clear path. And I would say go as far as to baking how you use AI into your onboarding and providing on-demand training, not something that was updated a year ago. Last but not least, You really want to encourage organic growth and adoption. Your training team is never going to be as effective as a teammate on each team who understands the demands of the job day in and day out. AI will continue to evolve, and some of your best ideas will come from individuals in your organization, not strategy leaders, not AI leaders. Building a group of internal AI champions is enormously helpful, and you can look to them to help guide where we should focus and even where we should train others. You can ask each team to nominate an AI champion and make sure they have time baked into their week to educate and share with others. And last but not least, you should reward and recognize the individuals who help their teammates and ensure that their leaders are bought in on this being a real part of their role, not an after gig or a nighttime activity. In conclusion, AI is not about chasing hype or trying to automate everything overnight. It's really about creating the right guardrails, identifying the right opportunities, choosing the right tools, and helping people build the habits to use them well. The organizations that win with AI won't be the ones that move the fastest with zero direction. They'll be the ones that are intentional, practical, and consistent. If we do that well, AI becomes more than a tool. It really becomes a lever for scale, efficiency, and better business outcomes.
If you have questions for Matt related to this presentation, you have a Q&A box right in front of you. Just type in your questions and we'll do our best to get to as many of the answers to those right at the top of the hour on our next Q&A panel.